All right. Here's a quick trip inside the mind of a madman here. So many times I'll be writing and I'll want to reference something else that I wrote in the past. And rather than going to my own site, going to the Substack search bar, and then typing in the piece that I want to find, I'll skip a step entirely and I'll quickly type in the Google Chrome bar, quote, like mostly metrics, a couple of words from the title. And this has historically worked really well for me because I'm a psychopath who's written the equivalent of like four Stephen King novels on metrics. So my SEO, it kicks ass. Hell yeah, brother. And if I'm being really honest, it's a nice ego bump to see yourself on the World Wide Web and next to ahead of other sites. It's kind of like, yeah, I exist. But this week I got really pissed. So I wrote, well, this is kind of fucked. I typed in my own article headline is LTV to CAC the Nickelback of SaaS metrics. And Google AI is literally one boxing the exact stuff I wrote, then kindly putting my article afterwards. No wonder why people are saying search traffic is down. It feels exploitative to put their summary, read word for word, copying before my own stuff. So the Google gravy train is over. In fact, my friend Brian Morrissey of the Rebooting said, we're heading for a world of Google Zero. That's a scary term. And business owners need to plan for a place where we can't depend on Google for new traffic or discovery. I'm feeling a bit negative Ned today, and I would venture that it's actually a step worse than that. Not only is it over, but LLMs plus big search, they're using our own work against us. And this has an existential impact on not just media companies like me, but also anyone who depends on search to point potential customers to their product. Hint, that's everyone who's listening. Quick, short word from our sponsors. Today's podcast is brought to you by Zenscar. Are you still operating like it's 2015? Data entry, spreadsheet calculations, and waiting for developers? A lot has changed, amigos. It's time to catch up. Zenscar is an AI powered order to cash platform. Imagine having an extra pair of hands in your finance team. Sending a credit note? Done. Creating a report? It's in your inbox already. Wondering why your collections fell? Here are potential reasons why. Zenscar AI does all the heavy lifting for you so you can focus on what matters. Your customers demand flexible pricing options. Your sales team throws in custom terms to close deals. Traditional platforms force you to manual fixes, spreadsheets, or developers. On Zenscar, everything is on autopilot. Just send your contracts and usage to the platform. It automates everything downstream: billing, revenue recognition, collections, and SaaS metrics. It is everything you need to scale smarter without losing control, so you can do more with less. The best part? It works as an extension of your team. Hands on support at every step of the migration, implementation, and beyond. Ready to leave behind the manual mayhem? I know I am. Step into the future of finance today. Visit zenscar.com/RTN and book a demo. That is ZENSKAR.com/RTN. ZENSKR.com/RTN. Check it out in the show notes and book a demo. Woo! So I hate to break it to you, the Google gravy train is over. So to concentrate on the non-paid side of search discovery, the unwritten agreement that we've had for like the last 20 years or so was that if you wrote stuff that others found valuable, Google would crawl, reference, and serve back that information to others so they could click and visit your site. And the more people first value add and relevant that content was, the higher you would rank. And you could lean into the algorithm by optimizing for the words people were searching for, which would give your site some more juice. And I know that I'm oversimplifying the search technology that has some of the smartest people in the world working on it, but also fuck them because they changed it. It seems like the agreement is over, or at least it's not as mutually beneficial as it once was. The reality now seems to be if you do the hard work to write something that people find valuable, Google will crawl it, they'll reference it, and then they'll serve you your own info in a synthesized version outside of your website, skipping the trip to your site altogether. It's like that meme from a Succession. Historically speaking, when I'm betrayed, it's usually you. And so a quote from Neil Vogel, he's the CEO of Dotdash Meredith, and he was on the People versus Algorithms podcast with my buddy Brian. He said, no one anticipated some giant cyborg stealing all our content, synthesizing it with everything else to come back and compete with us, and actively choosing to give us limited attribution or no compensation for this. And that quote kept me up pretty late last night. So then it got me thinking, like, if I can't beat them, do I join them? Because there's also the question, or maybe it's the problem of sometimes wanting to be plagiarized. And so when I had that note about being pissed off last week about getting one box with my own stuff, one of the readers on Substack said, and if you are a SaaS company trying to figure out your content marketing strategy in the AI era, how do you get Gemini or ChatGPT, Grok, et cetera, to want to plagiarize your content over that of your competitors? This is where it gets real deep. So if I'm a SaaS tool for engineers that scans their code for vulnerabilities, there's a good chance a buyer these days will ask ChatGPT or Claude, hey, give me a succinct comparison of the pros and cons of each of these potential tools I could buy. And there's a huge incentive to get your product marketing content into the chatbot. So then it's pushed back out to the reader as the best tool coming from a quote unquote neutral third party. So I was on the phone with a friend yesterday, and he's like, "Hey, check out this." So he pulls up Perplexity on the screen, and he gave it his golf swing, his style of play, and the course he's a member at. And then he asked it to recommend the best golf ball for him to buy. Now, you don't think Titleist wants Perplexity to gobble up their content and serve it back to him as, quote, like deeply contemplated, neutral consumer research? Like, absolutely. Of course they do. In the words of System of a Down, please steal this album. But from like the perspective of a publisher, you've got this catch 22 in your hands. If you say fuck it and give it to the LLMs, they won't link back to you at all. And that link, by the way, was like a super weak consolation prize. Like it's kind of like hidden in the corner. It's not even that powerful. But if you say go ahead, they use your own content against you without any compensation. And if we're being honest, if you hit block and they say they aren't crawling your stuff anymore, it's like tricks on you. Like they already did, right? They already crawled the whole internet pretty much. And as far as your future content goes, why would we trust a company like Google or Meta to not digest this data and print gold bullion via these Gemini summaries? It's not exactly an iron curtain we're putting up there, right? Every company out there is doing something with data that would look gross if people knew. There are no saints in search, and there's certainly no crying in the casino. So where do we go from here? Is getting angry at a technology like Google the same thing as getting angry at my toaster? Am I just Don Quixote attempting to fight electric powered windmills, screaming up at the sky? The reality is the universe does not care how much your website made last year. The universe does not care that companies like Chegg and Stack Overflow are getting wiped out. Pour out some for the homies. And here's another quote from Neil Vogel on Brian's podcast. You can't be sentimental. You cannot care what worked yesterday because it doesn't matter. The universe could not care less that your print magazine made $200 million 10 years ago. Your job is to make things people love and get that in front of them in ways they value. And to Neil's point, the money part is easy if you get the audience part. That's the hard part. And that takes being flexible in how you go about it. And you have to diversify where users come from. I was in a Slack group thread last night and I was looking through it, and somebody made an astute observation. He said, well, maybe this wasn't the best business model to begin with. Depending on Google for Discovery has a lot of platform risk. Perhaps this just like wasn't meant to last. And all right, now I'm going to try to be positive, and it might actually be great for publishers like me. I've always been further down the funnel for advertisers, trying to reach CFOs in a way that's more highly targeted than Google AdWords and SEO are. Like I've always outperformed them with advertisers. So perhaps that demand gen budget actually reverts towards those like me who have a valuable, engaged audience that's built on trust and human qualities, and pics of my dog Walter eating ice cream. Another positive is there is a ton of crappy content out there. Everyone and their aunt now has a Substack, and many of them are filled with surface level AI generated hot garbage. Perhaps this will serve as a much needed cleansing, kind of like when the rainforest burns down and opens up the skyline for sun to shine down on other stuff to grow. And so at first, I thought the game had completely changed overnight while we were all sleeping. After, for the last 10 years, we plowed half of our VC funded budgets into Google AdWords. There have always been different channels that give different ROI depending on the day, month, year. Okay, so do you hate Google? Another quote from Neil. Google does what's in the self-interest of Google. And if I was running Google, maybe I would do the same thing. Maybe I would steal less content or whatever, but essentially I'd have to do the same thing because that's what box they put themselves in. And that's coming from someone, a CEO. His share of traffic from search went from 65% down to 35% last year. So they were highly dependent on Google. And that was all before the emergence of AI on the search results page. It was just Google doing Google things well before Google started doing this untoward AI stuff. And this will inevitably lead to where, like I said, Google puts up a big goose egg for us all. So how do you manage that risk? One way is to set up economic structures that emerge to replace the page view structure. For publishers, licensing will be a larger component of their revenue. It'll be a line item. I don't think it can meet everything. And content is being fed on a licensing basis to these centralized nodes because that's where all the distribution is. We will be essentially like feeding ChatGPT. I'm picturing like the train conductor who's just shoveling coal into the furnace. And to me, It feels like very Black Mirror-esque. There was this one episode that stuck with me where these individuals are required to cycle on these exercise bikes all day to earn merit points. It's like the currency of their world, and they can use it for buying like basic necessities and virtual goods, but they're basically chained to these bikes. And this dystopian society, it uses the bikes for energy generation, but it also is a means for people to gain currency to survive. I don't want to be writing for that reason, right? I don't want to be chained to the bike just to feed the machine. And Reddit made a deal with OpenAI. I think it was like 60 million to license their data. That was a ton less than I thought it would be to access like the unfettered minds of millions of degens. Imagine like if I, CJ, called up OpenAI to negotiate a deal for my Substack's content licensing. It's like that Dave Chappelle skit where he calls the president to negotiate hostages and they just hang up. They'd be like, hello? Huh? What? Nobody there. And like systems using your content to compete against you sucks. I don't want to mince words there. But I'm realizing this is really just a subsegment of a game inside the game. It's all a continual search for distribution, a search for alpha. None of it is personal. The game didn't change, it just got more fierce. There's one of my favorite scenes from The Wire where Cuddy thinks the game has changed. And he's like, man, I'm used to revolvers, man. 38 don't jam. And Slim says back, don't hold 15 neither. He said, game done changed. And Slim says, game the same, just got more fierce. So what are some ways to prepare for a zero Google world? So as someone who deals in resource allocation bets for a living as a CFO and now a business owner, if we thought of Google as the tippity top of the funnel, we now need to participate in areas of the funnel that are further down yet more fragmented and therefore require more effort and thought. So one way is participation in niche communities. Another is mobilizing customers as advocates through referral programs. Like they're your biggest engine for growth. Another is having other companies that you partner with refer you to their customers and vice versa. So mining each other's customer bases. Like, conferences making a comeback, maybe in person. And then audio sponsorships like podcasts. Woo! Now, I'll keep writing and podcasting until they throw me out of the club. And the best way to grow since the beginning of time has always been the word of mouth. I'm pretty sure the Bible has sold a lot of copies with word of mouth. I've had the distribution in here all along, I'm realizing. Historically, it's been many, many times more useful, actually, than Google. Corporations should think about this as well. How do you arm your customers to be advocates? So, starting today, if you share mostlymetrics.com with a Slack or a Teams group of 25 people or more, and tell them to subscribe because it's awesome, I will hook you up with a branded Yeti mug. And let me tell you, these things are deluxe. You can drink iced coffee out of it and it's delicious, or a cold Miller Lite on the beach this summer. So send me a screenshot, cj@mostlymetrics.com, group of 25 people or more in Slack, and I will send you one of these. They cost a lot of money also. I have to fit that into the budget. But hey, once again, we're just redistributing resources here. If anybody listening is from a company like a HubSpot or a marketing company that's built their backbone on finding like their articles and content online, please reach out. I'd love to have you on the podcast. But remember, the game done changed. We got to change with it.